Hello and welcome to another episode of PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people just like you, whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis. I'm Lita.
I'm Ron.
I'm Walter Cronkite.
Collectively, we're the hosts of PodcastDX.
And that's the way it was.
Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Mike. Mike is a former fire chief for the village of Elmwood Park. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Gene. Thank you for having me.
Mike, hi, how are you? Thank you for taking the time out and speaking with us today.
No problem.
I understand that you had a bit of a scare recently. You thought you might be having a heart attack. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did. Last year, while passing out flyers for our annual block party, I was walking down the block, passing them out, going up the stairs of every house, and I had a cigar in my mouth.
Okay,
and,
there you go.
Yeah, sure.
I could picture this now.
Yep. And I got halfway down the block, and I started to sweat and get some discomfort in my chest. And I thought to myself, how do the mailmen do this with that big sack? You know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I got to the corner, across the street, and I continued passing out the flyers. And by the time I got to even with my house across the street, I said, I'm done. And I walked across the street and I sat in my chair that's out in front of my house and got rid of the cigar about a half a block ago. And because I couldn't really complain to my wife that I was having chest pain with a cigar. So I got rid of it. I sat there, and after a little bit, I started to feel better.
Okay.
I bet you were a little concerned with things going on with your heart. Have you ever had any problems with your heart before?
I did. Back in August of 2005, we were on vacation in Sanibel Island, Florida, and again got chest pains and sweaty, and sat down for a while, and after a while things got better. And I didn't do anything in Florida, but when I came back to Illinois, I went to Good Samaritan Hospital, and sure enough, I had a blocked artery. And that was the first one. They fixed it, they put a stent in, and the doctor gave me a clean bill of health. So after that, I went back to my cigars.
Okay. I was thinking that your lifestyle before, when you were working as a firefighter, that could have been advantageous or detrimental to your overall heart health. On the positive side, there's hard work, there's exercise, and I imagine that career path keeps a person in top physical condition. But on the negative side, there's stress. So entering an active fire, perhaps with people trapped inside, that has to be stressful, and stress can put your heart at risk, so maybe don't blame the cigars. But Mike, how do you think that your chosen career has played a role in your health?
Being around, the fire service and having paramedics at your beck and call, I was fortunate because when we went on calls and there was a severe incident, I was usually the guy that was directing firefighters, paramedics, and whoever, do this, do that, and I would stand out in front of the scene and, just wave my arms and, make sure everybody was doing the right thing. And sure, that's pretty stressful.
Yeah.
There were a couple times while I was on the scene that I actually got involved with, pulling hose or, advancing into a fire. And I remember one time we were at a call in another town, and I started to get chest pains, and I backed out and, stood out in front for a while, and everything went away. But that's just the way I operate. I wait till things subside and I keep my mouth shut. Otherwise, my wife would have me in the emergency room every 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when I get the scare, then I go back to my salads and my club sodas and lay off the cigars for a while.
Mike, what happened? What else can you tell us about last year? What symptoms were you having?
Well, again, I had I never had a heart attack.
Okay.
I've always, they've told me that I don't have any damage.
That's great.
And they said I never had an actual heart attack, but because things were blocked, that's what caused the shortness of breath and it felt like you had a sandbag on your chest. Mm-hmm. So nowadays I know when things are wrong and I know what to do. So last summer when that happened, we went to the hospital and they started their testing, and they said, okay, we're going to keep you overnight, and tomorrow morning we're going to send you for an angiogram. I said, well, what happens if you find something? They said, well, we're going to fix it. So we were at Elmhurst Hospital, went down for the angiogram. And usually they like to go through your femoral artery,
Right.
which is in your leg. And nowadays with technology, they could go through your wrist.
Right.
And the wrist, I found, was absolutely painless.
Oh.
So they strapped on your arm pretty tight, and they put the camera and the catheter through. And the doctor asked me how I was doing during the procedure, and they've got the flat screens off to the side, and you could pretty much see what's going on.
Wow.
Oh, while they're doing it?
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it looks like a road map, and you could actually see the catheter going in, and they'll explain to you what's going on as they're advancing through into your heart. So long story short, they found 3 blockages. One was 95, one was 75, and one was 55.
Wow.
So he said, we're going to fix the 50. He said, actually, with 55 is fixed. He said, I fixed it. He goes, we're going to give you tomorrow off. This was a Monday. He said, we're going to give you tomorrow off. You can rest up. And then Wednesday, we're going to go fix the 75. So the following Wednesday, they took me down. And
Were you in the hospital the whole time?
yeah.
Okay.
And they went in again. They fixed the 75. And I asked about the 55. They said, well, we don't worry about that. That's not too bad yet. So I started to feel better.
Oh, sure, I would think. Right?
It's pretty much immediate. When they clean you out,
Yeah.
when they clean those
You
arteries,
can feel it, huh?
you could feel it right away.
Wow.
So I went to, they put me in cardiac rehab. I was 8 weeks in cardiac rehab 3 days a week. And my daughter-in-law was pretty proud of me because I was doing 30 minutes of hard labor on the treadmill 3 days a week.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
And I survived, and here we are.
No cigars, though, on the treadmill.
No,
They
they
put
wouldn't
in
allow
like
me.
a carrot.
They
Like
wouldn't
with
allow
a
the
carrot.
cigars.
Yeah. And you try to get it. Yeah. And did it help to see what was going on when you had like the angiogram and everything? Did you feel comforted by the fact that you could actually see what was going on there on the screen?
They give you something to relax you.
Right. Okay.
And he was explaining things, and as much as I was watching the screen and thought I was understanding everything, you're kind of so relaxed. I couldn't care less what was going on.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask if it was open heart, but you said it was already
All through the
through
wrist.
the wrist. I've never heard of that through the
Yeah.
wrist.
You can't even see the mark anymore where they went through.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The first one, they went through the femoral artery.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
I take it back. The first one and the second one was femoral. And then these 2 here were through the wrist.
Okay.
Okay. And do you have to, I know when you have it through the femoral artery, they put some stitches in there and they make you lay flat for an extended period of time. How did that differ when they did it in the wrist?
What they do after they take the catheter out of your wrist, they give you a plastic, it almost looks like a watch, like they're putting a watch on you, but it's a big piece of plastic, and they tighten it up real nice so that it makes a pressure dressing.
Okay. But
And
you
they
could-
leave it on for about an hour, and then the
Okay.
nurse will come in your room and make sure that you're not bleeding, and take it off, and you're done.
I'll be darned.
That's great.
Wow.
And how has this affected like your everyday life now? I know your daughter-in-law is probably pushing the salad still, and your wife Cindy is probably saying, "Hey, just maybe 1 cigar a week." And
Well-
how is all that? How is everything going with the day-to-day life, and how has it affected like your leisure pursuits?
Well, I can't lie.
Okay.
I could, but I got someone in the room that's going to hit me in
Yeah.
the back of the head if I do. Actually, I'm hoping that once the weather breaks, that I get back out there and start walking.
Awesome.
My diet is pretty much the same.
Okay. Yeah.
We
I
just
think-
had pizza.
Yeah.
You know what? I think that we're creatures of habit, and that's one problem. But I think because we live in Chicago, we don't have the availability to exercise and walk outside all the time. So it is difficult. I think everybody in the Chicago area, well, except for Gianna over there, who works out every day of the year, we just don't have the access, and I think it makes it harder. I mean,
Okay,
at least that's an excuse I'm using.
Can I make a recommendation? Have
Yes.
you ever done a little trip through IKEA?
Oh my gosh, that's a mile and a quarter. A mile and a quarter.
A mile and a quarter. And you could do that lap more than once, and you get to see all sorts of interesting items along the way.
Right.
And
Yeah,
here, listening on fights, there's some drama.
Yes.
See, now, if I did that, I'd have to take my wife.
And then you'd be shopping on
She'd
the
be
way.
shopping.
And see, now
And then your
yeah.
stress would go up.
Absolutely. Then we'd leave the parking lot and go right back to the hospital.
Okay.
Don't you want to be known as a mall walker, though? You could go to the mall in the morning before
at all.
it
Right.
opens up.
Right.
Mike, what can you tell us about your future health outlook can you take steps to prevent further narrowing of the blood vessels?
Well, they tell you can, by proper diet and exercise, but I got a head like a rock, and I try. I had a really good time at the cardiac rehab. I was doing real well. And when you get to the point where your insurance company says he's done, they kick you out of cardiac rehab, and then you just pretty much, like a guy like me, I went back to my old habits.
I imagine it's pretty easy to do that.
I'm encouraged to think that once summer or spring is coming, and I'm going to get back out there. Sure. I promise.
Okay.
And before you know it, you might have grandkids to push around in a stroller.
Okay,
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I might.
Well, Mike,
I could push the buggy while I'm smoking a cigar.
No, you cannot smoke in front of the child or children. Mike, just so that you know, the Mayo Clinic says that a stent, they were developed to reduce the reconstitution. Restenosis. I don't know how restenosis. And they can clog up again. So you got to really kind of watch it.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because when they went in to do the angiogram, they did a survey of all the previous stents.
Oh.
And they told me that all the other ones were clear and wide open.
Oh, good,
awesome.
good. Then
Well,
we won't worry about you.
I guess nowadays they can actually have stents that release drugs and medications to help people.
They are
out.
medicated.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
Some of them are medicated.
Okay,
That is
good.
utterly
But
amazing.
I asked the doctor how much a stent costs.
Okay.
And he
And?
didn't know.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
But he asked me why I asked.
Right.
And I said, well, I'll buy a box.
Because what?
I'll
You'll
buy a
buy a
box.
box.
Oh, brother, you want to buy stock in it. Mike, with 4 arteries clogged, 4 was it, or 3? 3?
Last time
Now
three.
it's 3.
Okay.
Okay.
You must have felt symptoms that made you realize that something was wrong. And you were telling me, going down the street and losing a little bit of breath and feeling pressure. Is there anything else our listeners might want to watch out for that might be a pre-warning that something is not right with your heart?
Absolutely. A paramedic or a paramedic instructor, they'll give you the classic
Okay.
symptoms.
Yeah.
Chest pains, shortness of breath, pain in your left arm, pain in your jaw. Those are classic signs.
Okay.
However, they're not the only signs. I felt like like someone had a bear hug on me, like they were squeezing me from behind.
Okay.
And then when I sat down, I felt better.
Oh, really?
While during my time on the fire department, I heard many of them, but they escape me right now.
Yeah.
Sweating. People said they had pain in their teeth. Earaches.
Oh, okay.
People react in different ways when an artery is clogged.
Okay. Okay.
The only thing I could say is that if you're having any kind of chest discomfort or shortness of breath, better call 911, because that'll be the thing that saves you.
I know. I called 911 last year. I think it was last year, because I felt pressure in my chest, and I felt short of breath and sweaty and completely different. And I just said, I think something's wrong. And it was like 2 a.m.
When something's
It woke
wrong.
me up in the middle of the. So I called 911, and because I've got dogs in the house, I didn't want them having a fit. I walked out.
Yeah, she walked.
I
out
walked
to the
out
end
to
of
the
the driveway.
to meet them.
You didn't
meet
have
the
chest pain
ambulance.
during the day at all?
No,
It was at night?
no.
It was only at night.
So they took me to the hospital. It turned out that I had this burrito that was about this big for lunch,
She had a now famous burrito.
and it just kind of did me in. And
But the rest of us had severe chest pain just from the whole incident. Yeah. But
So-
when in doubt, like you said.
but it was
it's
better to be
go.
checked out
Absolutely.
than not be checked
Absolutely.
out.
Safe than sorry.
And
Right.
she actually did have some heart damage when she took Imitrex, which is a migraine medication,
Mm-hmm.
and she reacted poorly to it, and she went to the hospital, and they were able to.
Reverse it or something?
Well, they put nitroglycerin.
Oh, I
cream.
hate that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jack. Jack, this is a clean show.
Mike, thank you ever so much for sharing your stories with us today.
I
And
had a good time. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm thrilled. I learned so much about you, and it's been a pleasure. Do you have any final advice for our listeners?
Yeah, exercise,
Okay.
diet, don't do what I do.
Okay.
And if anything's going wrong, make sure you call 911 and get to the doctor. But don't wait till 2 in the morning.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Firemen and paramedics don't like that. How long you had this? Well, since this afternoon.
Oh, no. It woke me up that way. Oh, good.
Well, Mike, thank you for coming in and sharing your story with us. I believe that our listeners will be inspired by what you had to say.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had a good time.
If our listeners have any questions or comments related to today's show, they can contact us at podcastdx@yahoo.com, through our website, podcastdx.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram.
And if you have a moment to spare, please leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast and get ready for our next auction.
Auction?
You're up.
Oh, I see. That's the way it was. Please keep in mind that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regime. And never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this podcast.